This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Hi, Lance Lambert, Boveda.com. How are you, man?
I'm good, Todd. How are you doing, man? Another week, right?
Oh, geez, this world is just nuts. And of course, you're from, you're right there, and what seems to be like so much going on, just right near Calabasas. In fact, you're only about 30 minutes away from the crash, right?
Oh my gosh, not even. It's about, 15 kilometers from my house. So literally it's like a 10-15 minute drive. And that accident actually occurred it was Sunday morning, and we do what's called a cars and coffee. You know my history. I'm a bit of a gearhead. And so I took my son, then we jumped in the GTO, went down to this cars and coffee, and it literally happened while we were there. I mean, just after we got there. And the crazy part, one of the first things I said when I got the news was, man, I'm surprised they're flying in this weather. And I guess that's just coming about now. But it was really unusual. You know how close I am as the crow flies, maybe 20, 30 minutes from the ocean. And we do get the marine layer, or the inversion, as some people call it, the fog that comes in. But it was unusually foggy that morning. I mean, to the point of almost drizzling, kind of London fog, if you will. And so I was completely amazed when they said that someone was fine, let alone obviously what happened. But it was tough because, we were in Westlake, and Westlake is all of maybe 8 kilometers from where the accident actually occurred. So that was terrible news. Southern California, a lot of people gathered down at the Staples Arena, downtown LA. Of course, on Sunday, there's still people, a little visual there on yesterday and today. So it's been tough. Definitely lost a phenomenal and extremely talented individual,
Yeah, well said, Lance Lambert from Boveda.com, and it's been a big focus clearly on the show for the past couple of days, and it's weirdly, I say weirdly because it's weirdly emotional for millions of people because they never even met the man, yet they're like I am. I'm having difficulty sleeping. I'm thinking about life differently. I'm thinking about my own children differently. It's just. It's really amazingly spiritual and beautiful. That sort of I look at it almost as a sacrifice of one man and sadly his daughter, and then the others in the helicopter crash. Don't want to forget about them at all. But how really, let's be honest, with Kobe, the impact he had on multiples of millions of people, that it's made people want to be better in the last couple of days, and that's what I get out of this. People just want to be better. They want to celebrate his life, and they want to grow like he did as a human being, and they want to be better. And I just think that's awesome. And I don't want to make a segue or a cheesy cannabis segue here, but it's sort of spiritual, and we need more of that kind of stuff this day and age, don't we?
Yeah, I agree, and it is something. You're right. Rather, people were big basketball NBA fans or not, that's almost irrelevant because of just the level that individual was as far as influence and encouragement from a positive standpoint. And again, also not to take away, but it gives me a little bit of a flashback a few years ago. Also being a former DJ and Avicii passing on, whom a lot of people who are not into EDM, into that music, are not at all familiar with Avicii. Everyone knows the bigger players like Tiesto and Deadmau5 and Skrillex and so on. But Avicii was such a heavy influence in that space. I mean, he really created a subgenre within EDM. And that's almost like the same way you could say about Kobe. Kobe, really the way he approached the sport, the way he played the sport, and the level he took it to, it was kind of an anomaly. And there's very few like that. We think of Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. I mean, he definitely falls into that category of being so much more than just a quote-unquote basketball player. So it is tough, and I think it is affecting a lot more people than a typical loss that happens to someone with a specific sport or category.
Yeah, tough times, and you being so close to it. We just appreciate you making time for the segment here, brought to you by BovedaInc.com. And Lance has been such an integral part of our show as we learn about cannabis and sort of, is it going to ever be legal in the United States? And there are top-selling cannabis states in the U.S., though, and I guess drum roll, please. Who are the leading cannabis sellers in your country?
I know you'd be able to guess this, Todd. You know, we're close enough friends. We have these conversations on the regular as far as where the industry is going, but no surprise, the largest populate state is the largest contributing state to the coffers as it be, and that would be California. Came in at $3.8 billion. That's billion with a B, with combined recreational and medical sales in last year's time. So that's quite a substantial amount. You know, there's some that they're close in the second, third, fourth position. That's Colorado, Michigan, Florida. Colorado came in at 1.7 billion cumulative. Michigan at 1.21 billion, and Florida at 1.2 billion. But the thing to point out, and again, we've discussed this, you know, California is this behemoth. It's really a country within a country, right? We've got 40 million people in this state alone. And so, yes, that's a high number, but that's also, you know, a high population that goes with it. But you look at the runner-ups, if you will, and it's kind of impressive. So you've got Colorado at 1.7 billion, but their population is under 6 million. It's 5.69 right now, you know, according to the stats from Wikipedia. So obviously it's substantially smaller, yet only a third of what was raked in California. Then you look at Michigan, which was next in that lineup as well, right? Michigan coming in at $1.21 billion in sales, and they are just under 10 million in population. And then last, we don't want to leave off Florida, because Florida is another one of those larger, California, New York, Texas, and Florida, those top four populated states. They've got a population of 21.3 million, yet they came in at 1.2 billion, just a fraction under what Michigan came in at, which has about half the population. So I think this says, just looking at big picture, the amount of product that was sold and the amount that subsequently was consumed is not always relative to the overall population. And the big differentiator is the accessibility, right? Because as far as people that are pro-cannabis, we know that's hedging up in the high 60 percentile, 67, 68 percentile, according to the polls. We know that the consumption rate is in the high teens, 18, 19%, if not higher, for those that don't want to share that information in the States. Yet the numbers are all over the place. And it just shows that, again, California is a much more restricted market when you compare it to places like Colorado or California when it comes to accessibility, because it's only a medical market. So there's things that factor into that. But this is still a lot of money. I mean, this is a lot of money and a lot of taxes coming out of it as well.
Yeah, definitely a lot of taxes. What does this mean? Washington's broken seed-to-sale system has cost them $2 million. What's Washington's seed-to-sale system, Lance?
So this is something we don't get into the SaaS. You know, my background, Todd, it's always kind of keep an eye on the tech side, because I did spend a bit of time in tech. And this is their what we call a seed-to-sale tracking system. And this is actually for Leaf Data Systems, which is owned by a larger company, or created by a larger company called MJ Freeway, that had a bit of its own issues in the past, a couple times of breach of security, where private information was made accessible via hacking. So they've had their tough times over the years. But this whole thing going on with the system just not properly working, it's kind of tough, because, yeah, Washington State, again, being up there on the list as well, and they have both a medical and a recreational program. They spent $2 million over the last few years on this program, and it's just not working. And it's frustrating those in the industry, because it's costing everyone money when you don't have a track and trace program in place that's properly working. And all this system does, just to back up a bit, the plants are essentially tracked from a certain stage, about clone. So within the first few weeks, they're tagged, and that product is then tagged all the way through the process. So from production to takedown to curing, drying, packaging, and all the way up to the retail sale. Every ounce, every gram is accounted for when it comes to cannabis. So when you have the system that's supposed to be watching this throughput and making sure that the checks and balances are there flawed, again, that can create quite a hiccup for the entire system as a whole. So it's just something to point out that not everything's perfect. It's a work in progress. And, you know, there's challenges even for those on the governmental side when it comes to enacting these programs.
really important programs, I would imagine, to enact, though, to really track. And if you think about it, still a substance, especially in America right now, that isn't federally legal. And I don't know much about the tracking systems in Canada. I know about sort of some of the security that goes into it because of a former client of ours in 360 Secure Corp, SAFE being their publicly traded symbol. But are all plants from seed to sale tracked in Canada? Do you know?
They are, and that was one thing that allowed Health Canada, HC, which is the governing department of cannabis in your country, to actually do some checks and balances with some people that unfortunately were not on the up and up with respect to their grow operations. So not naming any names, but a quick Google search, you'll find whom I'm speaking of. But there were a couple incidents last year, Q3 around, where they did find that there were some plants that were being grown outside of the tracking system, kind of a little cloak and dagger, if you will, hidden behind false walls and all kinds of such. And that really put a bit of a black eye on the industry. And for those of us that are on the legitimate side, that are on the up and up, that want to make sure everything is legit and following protocol, it's quite frustrating. It's the same thing we talked about VapeGate, where you had these individuals that were either getting injured or dying from consuming illicit vape cartridges on the open market. And that affected both the U.S. and the Canadian market as well. We're so close as far as neighbors. A lot of these issues transcend. But that's something that happened last year. And again, it really frustrated those that are on the legal side of it, because here you have these individuals in the illicit market that are pushing product that just isn't safe. And that's the whole reason why we wanted to legalize and legitimize it, because we wanted safe access to these products for the consumer. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. No more bathtub gin. They wanted legal liquor back in Prohibition, which for the record happened, almost 100 years about a week off from 100 years ago when Prohibition enacted. And that's the same reason why they reversed that 13, 14 years later, was because they knew they weren't going to be able to stop the people wanting access. And at least you could do is have it be a safe access. And of course, the government could tax it as well and profit from it, as we know, is another side effect too.
And Lance, I guess that will get me to what's going on with the illicit market. I learn. Lance Lambert from Boveda.com, who taught me that term, the illicit market. The stuff that's, let's be honest, not tracked, but what is being currently tracked is pricing, which is making it tough for the legal rec plays to be competitive in Canada here, and stuff that I think a lot of people are frustrated by. Where are we at now with comparables?
It's really interesting. So this is something that came out not too long ago. I mean, literally within the last several days from StatCan, and these are statistics specifically to the Canadian market as a whole. And what they've seen is the average cost of a gram of cannabis climbed $1.76% to $7.50 in the fourth quarter of 2019. So this overall price increase is a tribute to legal cannabis, is what the federal agency said in this report. So the overall average price is $7.37 per gram in the third quarter Canadian, and $7.87 per gram in the second quarter. So they're really just trending what's going on in the legal market versus what some of us might call FMV, or fair market value, of cannabis in the illicit market. And these exist everywhere, right? I think I shared a stat last year. There's another company that tracks the average price of an eighth, or 3.5 grams, around the world. And one of the most expensive places we were talking about was Tokyo, where you're coming in at least $32, $33 per gram, or per eighth, per gram, versus something like that you could literally buy an eighth in some legal markets. So it really is this extreme differentiator between legal and illicit, and geographical locations as far as where the product's being purchased, whether it be a legal market or not. But yeah, to see a 44% differentiation, it's, again, not too far off. We always talk about this, Todd, but there's a lot of similarities between the Canadian and California market, and it's about the same thing. Legal eighth is going for approximately $70 post-tax here, whereas you can still purchase in the illicit market an eighth for about $35 to $40. So we're not too far off between your home and my home as far as the difference between the legal and illicit market prices.
Yeah, Lance, the question will be, will there ever be a crackdown on the illicit markets? Will that ever go away to some extent? It'll always exist on a small level. In about a minute or less, do you think it's, in 10 years from now, if we're talking, do you think someone will say, well, we sure got a control on that illicit cannabis market in both Canada and the U.S.?
I think there's a plausibility, but there needs to be normalization, and I think the politics and the extreme taxation needs to be addressed as well. Because fact of the matter, and this is another story I didn't actually put in the mix, but 44% of all drug arrests last year, we're not talking 5, 10, 15 years ago, 44% were related to cannabis possession in the U.S. That's pathetic, people. When we have a methamphetamine epidemic, when we have an opioid crisis, there's tons of other illicit drugs, cocaine, MDMA, et cetera, that they could be going after. And still, you're telling me essentially just under half of the people that are being arrested or being fined, it's related to this plant. So we do have a long way to go. There's always going to be that underground market anywhere, but how much we can suppress it is really the question. I hope we can suppress it far more than we are today in another 5, 10 years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And ending stigmas is one of our big missions for sure. We've been like that from day one, and to help control some of the other terrible crises that we're seeing from big pharma, not from this wonderful plant. Anyway, that's my little anecdote on it all. I can't say anything medically or prove out anything. I can just tell you that, that's what I'll say. Lance Lambert, BovedaInc.com. Two-way humidity control packs, keeping your cannabis flower fresh. Please follow them at Boveda Cannabis and at Boveda Inc. as well, BovedaInc.com. We love these segments, man. Thank you so much. Look forward to talking to you next week. And for those, you're right in the heart of it, as we said, 15 minutes away from that helicopter crash. Anyone who's close to Kobe, if you know them, or just those who love the Lakers and love Kobe for what he's bringing that community and that big city and really that big state, we're there with y'all.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it.
Okay, Lance Lambert, everyone absolutely love that guy.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.